Hey there, Big Anklevich here. I'm a podcaster, an author, and a toy enthusiast, and I'm back with part 3 in my Cloak and Dagger series. In previous chapters, we talked about Cloak and Dagger's comic book origins and history, and then I talked about the first season of their TV show. And today, we're talking some toys. Finally, some toys. You're watching Big Anklevich on Toys. Marvel Legends put out Cloak and Dagger figures last year, and for a while I decided I didn't need them. Then their TV show came out. I'd been interested to see how the show was, and the increased visibility the show brought the characters suddenly made me want to get their figures. So I got them, then having the figures made me want to see the show and read their comics more. What do they call that? Reverberation or refraction? Positive feedback, maybe? Or even synergy. I don't know. What am I, an author or something? Leave me alone. My kids gave me Dagger for Christmas, and then when I went to check out the deals on Christmas decorations on the day after Christmas, I happened to find Cloak on the shelf in the toy aisle. They just restocked with a box of that Spider-Man wave, despite the fact that it had run its course something like 6 months before. Must have been an attempt to cash in on the Spider-Verse movie. Or maybe that's just Hasbro and their distribution issues. I just saw a new case of that wave come into my local Walgreens just the other day. So it may be the wave that will live forever. I like the figures a lot. I think they do a pretty good job of encapsulating what these characters are. Some have complained that Dagger is too plain. She's just an all-white female body with that dagger-shaped cutout on her chest. The biggest bit of deco she's got is the trademark stamp on the back of her leg, which is awful, and I wish they would have done that some other way. However, that's exactly what her character wore. Not the trademark stamp, I mean the outfit. It was a one-piece dance leotard, or no belts, no shoes, no nothing. It's how she appeared in the comics. Half of the time they didn't color her body in any way. She was portrayed as a white silhouette. She was basically supposed to be light incarnate, more or less. So if they'd done anything else with the figure, it would have been pretty disappointing. In other words, it works for me.
Me personally.
Oh, not that again. Anyway, it may seem plain, but it's an accurate portrayal of the character. I definitely prefer that to what they usually tend to do in superhero movies. That is what you call inaccurate. Think Michael Bay's Transformers or Sam Raimi's Green Goblin. You don't want that for poor Dagger, do you? Her face is well done. Her hair looks nice with a wash in there to give it some good texture. But I wish it had been longer and curlier like the classic comics. Could have been worse. They could have gone for this look, so it's better than the alternative. The one thing they skimped on was her necklace thing. It's not really a necklace, but it resembles one anyway. My guess is that it was supposed to explain how her top didn't fly open so that she was flashing everybody all the time. I think it's supposed to be a clasp or something, though there's no way that would work to hold her top together unless there was also a significant application of double-sided tape in use as well. At least the comic book creators gave some thought to it. The action figure creators gave no thought to it, and skipped it altogether. My guess is that it's a cost-saving measure, and laziness. If they included it, they'd have to sculpt a new chest, and why do that when they could just not do that and get the same amount of money anyway? The dagger-shaped chest cutout is a little weak as well. It looks like it's painted on rather than part of her clothing. I mean, it is painted on, but it's not supposed to look like it is. Maybe a little paint detail on the edge to make it look a little more realistic. They've been painting edges of clothing on Marvel Legends for a long time, however, and it usually looks less believable than it should. So, I guess I'm used to it and accept it. I would like to see them up their game or something, though. The chest cutout is also way too narrow. It doesn't really match what the character in the comics wore. Dagger comes with this piece here that can stick on her wrist to simulate the throwing of her daggers of light. It's pretty cool, and it looks just like they did in the comic. It's kind of odd and hard to figure out the right way to attach it so that it poses properly. It might help to take a look at some of the comic art to get the right idea. Cloak is similar to Dagger in that his body is completely unadorned. He has an even better excuse than Dagger, however. Most of the time, he's incorporeal, nothing more than a cloak with a head inside it. His body is basically a doorway to the Dark Force dimension. He has to concentrate just to make it solid. So the fact that he's just a plain solid black figure is, again, completely appropriate. Anything else would be weird. His hands, however, are not solid black. Instead, they're a smoky, translucent plastic, which is cool, illustrating that incorporeal nature. His cloak is made of a relatively rigid plastic. It has a little give to it, but not a lot. Depending on what you're after with the figure, that's either really cool or the absolute worst. It's rigid enough that you can actually pop Cloak's head off his body and rest it on top of the cloak, so that it looks like his body is turned to void like it does in the comics. Without the body inside the cloak, you can also pose Dagger so that it looks like she's being teleported out of his cloak like she does in the comics. However, there's very little else you can do with the cloak. Its plastic is rigid, but soft enough that you can pop it inside out and rest his head on top so that it looks like this. It's more like he's flapping the cloak out really wide, like he's going to swallow some drug dealer up into the Dark Force dimension. It doesn't quite fit that look he always has in the comics, though, where his cloak spreads out incredibly wide, rippling and curling all over the place. That's possibly the one big failing with this figure. It's good, but the cloak needs to be a little more dynamic. It's got those purple... Oh, crap. I think it's actually blue. I've been saying purple all this time. Is it blue? Blue and black stripes on it. In the last episode, I complained how the Cloak and Dagger TV show didn't understand Cloak's costume. They turned his cloak into a purple, black, and gold striped Mardi Gras outfit. I assumed that whoever was in charge of the costume just didn't understand the conventions of comics. If someone's suit is all black, they give it texture with colored highlights like Spider-Man's suit here. I thought the cloak was all black and the purple or blue stripes are just supposed to represent the highlights on the rippling cloth. But I think I might be wrong. This recent comic of Cloak and Dagger has Cloak wearing an all-black cloak, but then they do flashbacks, and in those flashbacks he's got the blue and black stripes, even up on his hood. Maybe it was supposed to be striped. With the figure, they also made it striped, further making me doubt myself. Instead of putting the purple or blue spots on the ridges of the rippling cloak, it's just striped. If you look close enough, you can even see that the stripes are sculpted into the plastic. Weird. I mean, you think you know something, and then it turns out that maybe you don't. Anyway, the sculpt for Cloak's head is really nice and detailed, with the goatee, all wrapped up in that hood. It looks good. It's funny how much I complain about how bad cloth capes and robes look on action figures. They don't look like actual clothes. They don't look realistic. I stomach it with certain figures if it's used minimally enough, but just can't stand it when it's too much. I don't collect dolls, I collect action figures. It's not a macho thing. I'm not trying to insist that I'm a boy and I don't play with dolls or anything. I just don't like the look of doll clothes. They look cheap and silly to me. I suppose I'll probably never own a Mego figure for that reason. There is an argument for the other side, though. Plastic clothes are more realistic, but they're rigid. They can turn your 216 points of articulation figure into a statue. Sure, you can get the body into some great poses, but then you have that stiff cape or robe keeping it from standing properly. My podcast co-host Rish Outfield gave up and just started collecting Kotobukiya and Marvel Select Gallery statues, and I can see how that might be tempting. You get something like this cloak figure. His name tells you what the problem is going to be. He's just a big cloak with a head. If you go with cloth, it's going to look silly. Might as well be a friggin' Cabbage Patch Kid. If you go with plastic, it's going to be stiff and difficult to do a whole lot with. For now, at least, I'm sticking with what I've got. I like toys. I collect toys. Statues aren't toys, they're art or something else. Toys have to be playable, at least a little bit, even if I'm going to do very little playing with them. I feel like I've found a few good ways to pose Cloak and Dagger to make them fun, despite the rigid cloak that makes Cloak less posable. How could you make them different to make them better? I don't know. I feel like they've made the best choice with how they've made these figures. And they make me happy. That's the thing that's the most important. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. Are you a fan of these figures? Do you prefer cloth robes to plastic ones? Let's fight it out down below. See you there. Oh, and see you next time.